In your view, is a recession in the United States inevitable?
No.
Why not?
Look, you're talking about the significant progress we've made.
We feel very good about where the United States is.
President Biden has been very decisive in his leadership, beginning with the American Rescue Plan. We rescued the economy, put shots in arms, money in pockets, kids back in school, laid the foundation for a robust economic recovery.
By any metric, with the exception of inflation, this country has moved forward under his leadership.
President Biden and his allies continue to insist the economy is in great shape. But saying something like with the exception of inflation, everything is going great, is a little bit like saying, if it hadn't been for the intervention of John Wilkes Booth, Mrs. Lincoln's visit to Ford's Theatre that night would have been a great success. Prices are rising at a rate that hadn't been seen in 40 years, eroding living standards as wages struggle to keep up. The Federal Reserve has belatedly responded by raising interest rates and will have to go much further, moves that may well prompt a recession. Economists and business leaders here in Davos and back at home are increasingly gloomy. At the start of this week's World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund said the global economy faces, quote, its biggest test since the Second World War, the US not excluded. So how bad could it get? Well, let's take this up now with the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama and Harvard professor Jason Furman. Jason, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You were one of those economists, particularly one of the handful of economists, I think it's fair to say, on the Democratic side, who warned a year ago that inflation was going to be a problem, particularly, and that some of the policies that the Biden administration could exacerbate the problem. You were right. Inflation really is now, seems to be well set in. How bad is the problem now? How long does this last? And what do we do to get out of it?
So I wish I was wrong, but thank you. I think we're going to be with this for a while. Not at 8%. Some of that really is transitory. Some of that really is due to Putin's invasion of Ukraine and won't continue, but way above the Fed's 2% target because a lot of it's gotten embedded in wages, which then go to prices, which then go to wages. There's still additional sources of demand in the economy, and we're seeing inflation shift. It's going away in goods, but it's appearing in a big way in services, especially housing.
And wages, as you point out, inflation's at 8%, as you say, it may come down. Wages are rising at about 5%. So that means, in real terms, workers are seeing really quite significant cuts in their real wages. That's especially at a time when unemployment is so low, when the quit rate, where people voluntarily leaving their jobs, is so high, vacancies so high. That's not sustainable, is it?
I don't think that's sustainable. Look, we have an economy that has some good things. We have a low unemployment rate. We're adding a lot of jobs. Consumers are spending. So there's a lot to like in the economy. But we also have wages adjusted for inflation falling at the fastest pace they've fallen in 40 years. And so it's not that surprising to me why people aren't thrilled with this economy. I think it's going to get somewhat better, but it's going to be a bumpy path to better.
Yeah, the Fed's obviously started raising rates, has committed to raising rates, perhaps quite aggressively, certainly compared with the recent past. It's going to try to pull off a soft landing, as people call it, which is to bring inflation down without crashing the economy, without producing a recession. Can it do it? Does history suggest it's got a good chance?
I don't know. The Fed got 6 months behind the curve. They lost a lot of ground. Once they woke up to what was going on in the economy, they pivoted very quickly. I don't have a complaint with what they're doing right now. I think they're going at roughly the right pace. Maybe they'll need to put 75 basis points on the table instead of 50 if the inflation continues. But they're moving very aggressively. I think it's worth a try. It's possible we'll get lucky. It's possible they'll be able to bring inflation expectations down, and this will all work painlessly. But that's not my best guess.
There's a lot of fear around. It's reflected in the markets. There's a lot of talk about it here in Davos of a recession, an imminent recession. Some people even think we might be in a recession. We had a negative growth in the first quarter. What's your sense of that? Is the economy actually slipping now into recession, you think?
I'm actually more worried about too much demand propping up inflation than I am too little moving us into an imminent recession. And when I say imminent, I mean over roughly the next year. Consumer spending in the second quarter is tracking at over a 4% annual rate. Consumers are really pessimistic everywhere except when they actually spend money in our economy. Businesses have more room to rebuild inventories. The Fed has cooled down the housing market, I hope, with the higher mortgage rates, but businesses can still borrow just as much as they want to. And I hear from CEOs, a lot of them continuing to make big plans for investment and growth.
And one thing President Biden did say, he tweeted about a week ago, He said this: "You want to bring down inflation? Let's make sure corporations pay their fair share." Can you explain the link between making corporations pay more in taxes and bringing down inflation?
Look, I think there's room for some recalibration on corporate taxes. I think 21% was lower than the rate.
But not as a measure to tackle current inflation.
I don't, look, right now, everyone in every political party has whatever idea they like, and they say, oh, and by the way, it'll also lower inflation. I think this, rebalancing the tax system, investing more in children, investing more in education, investing more in climate change, that to me is a good idea. It's not really about inflation, but everyone's trying to make everything about inflation.